The story of Paul Revere's ride is a famous one. Most people picture one man on a horse riding alone through the night. He is yelling, "The British are coming." It is a powerful image. It makes him seem like a lone hero. This picture comes from a poem. A long time ago, a writer named Henry Wadsworth Longfellow wrote it. His poem made Revere a legend, but history is often more complicated than a poem. The truth is, Revere was not alone. His ride was part of a much bigger effort. Many people worked together that night. They all helped spread the alarm. It was a group effort. A big network of people was involved. They had been planning this for a while. They knew trouble was coming. This wasn't a sudden act by one man. It was a planned response. It involved many brave people. Some of them are famous. Many are not. But they all played a part. That night, their efforts changed history. They helped start the American Revolution. When people think of Paul Revere, they think of a single rider. He is on a horse in the dark. He is shouting to wake up the towns. This picture is very strong in our minds. It is a story we learned as kids. It feels simple and clear. One hero, one mission. But the real story is messier. It has more people in it. It is more about a community working together. It is less about one person doing everything alone. The idea of the lone rider comes from a poem. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow wrote, "Paul Revere's Ride" in 1860. This was a long time after the actual event. The poem was popular. It made Paul Revere famous. It made him a symbol of American bravery. But poems often change things to make a better story. They simplify history. Longfellow's poem did that. It focused on Revere. It left out almost everyone else. This shaped how we remember that night. It made us forget the group effort. In reality, the colonies were ready for a fight. They had been for years. People in Massachusetts knew the British were watching them. They knew the British army was getting ready to act. Boston was a hotbed of disagreement. The British controlled the city, but many colonists wanted freedom. They formed groups. They shared information. They planned what to do if the British attacked. One of these groups was called the Sons of Liberty. Paul Revere was part of it. These groups were not just about talking. They built systems. They set up ways to communicate fast. They knew speed was important. They knew they needed to warn towns quickly. If the British moved, every minute counted. These systems were already in place before Revere got on his horse. The British goal was clear. They wanted to seize colonial military supplies. These were hidden in places like Concord. They also wanted to arrest important leaders. People like Samuel Adams and John Hancock were targets. The colonists knew this. They were preparing to move these supplies. They were ready to protect their leaders. This wasn't a surprise attack. It was an expected move. The colonists had spies. They had their own intelligence network. Paul Revere was important, yes. He was a brave messenger, but he was just one thread in a very large fabric. Many people made up this fabric. Some were riders, some were spies, some were signal keepers, some were just regular townspeople ready to sound an alarm. They were all part of the big plan. This plan was for warning the countryside. It was for getting ready for a fight. The ride was not a solo act. It was a coordinated effort. It was a testament to how organized the colonists were. They had built a network. They used it when it mattered most. The night of April 18, 1775 did not happen in a vacuum. It was the result of months, even years, of planning. The colonists were not waiting to be surprised. They were actively gathering information. They were building a communication network. This network was essential. It let them respond quickly when the time came. A key person in this network was Dr. Joseph Warren. He was a leader in Boston. He was part of the Sons of Liberty. Warren was getting information from inside the British Army. He had sources. These sources told him what the British were planning. They told him the British troops were going to march. They were going to Lexington and Concord. They were looking for supplies. They were looking for Adams and Hancock. Warren knew this was a big deal. He needed to get the word out fast, but Boston was under British control. Sending messengers out of the city was dangerous. British patrols were everywhere. This is where the network came in. It was a team effort from the start. The decision to send riders was not Revere's alone. It was Warren's. He called on two men he trusted. Paul Revere was one. William Dawes was the other. They were both Sons of Liberty members. They were known for their loyalty. They were known for their bravery. And they knew the routes out of Boston. Before Revere even got on his horse, signals were being sent. It was Revere arranged for a signal to be given from the Old North Church steeple. This was for people watching from Charlestown. They needed to know how the British would leave Boston. Would they go by land or by sea? This was important for the riders. It would tell them which way to expect British patrols. Robert Newman was a sexton at the Old North Church. John Pulling Jr. was also involved. They were the ones who climbed the steeple, they hung the lanterns. One lantern meant the British were going by land. Two lanterns meant they were going by sea. It ended up being two lanterns. This signal was not for Revere. Since Revere was still in Boston, he already knew the plan. The signal was for others. It was for the people waiting in Charlestown. They would then tell other riders. This signal system itself was a group effort. It showed how many people had a role to play. The plan was about backups. It was about redundancy. They sent two main riders, Revere and Dawes. They took different routes. This increased the chances that at least one would get through. They knew the risks. They knew one rider might be caught, so they planned for it. This was smart. This was a team thinking ahead. And it wasn't just Revere, Dawes, and Warren. Many others were involved. There were people making sure the horses were ready. There were people helping the riders sneak past British guards. There were people waiting in Charlestown to receive the signal. There were people ready to spread the word once the main riders passed through their towns. This was a whole chain of communication. Each link was important. Each person played a part. Without this network, Revere's ride would not have happened, or it would have failed. It was the work of many hands. On the night of April 18th, 1775, the plan was put into motion. Dr. Joseph Warren sent for Paul Revere. He told him the British were moving. Revere quickly made his arrangements. He had help getting across the Charles River to Charlestown. Two men rowed him quietly past a British warship. This itself was a dangerous part of the journey. It needed more than just Revere. Once in Charlestown, Revere got a horse. He started his ride. His job was to go through Medford, Lexington, and on to Concord. He was to warn Samuel Adams and John Hancock in Lexington. He was to tell the militias along the way that the British were coming. He yelled his warning to sleeping houses. He knocked on doors. He delivered his message. He was a brave and fast messenger, but Revere was not the only one. William Dawes was the other main rider. Dr. Warren sent Dawes out at roughly the same time as Revere. Dawes took a different route. He left Boston by land. He went through the Boston Neck. This was a narrow strip of land that connected Boston to the mainland. It was heavily guarded by British soldiers. Dawes had to be clever to get past them. He made it. His route took him through Roxbury, Watertown, and Waltham. His destination was also Lexington. Why two riders? It was simple common sense. If one rider was caught, the other might still get through. It doubled their chances of success. Revere and Dawes were both well known in the Patriot community. They were trusted. They knew the roads. They knew the people in the towns they were passing through. Dawes' ride was just as important as Revere's. He covered many miles. He alerted many towns. But his name is not as famous. This is largely because Longfellow's poem focused only on Revere. Dawes did not get a famous poem, so he largely faded from popular memory, and it was not just Revere and Dawes. Many other riders were also out that night. They were riding on different routes. They were carrying the same message. Some of these riders were sent out by committees in other towns. Once the main alarm reached a town, local riders would often take over. They would spread the warning to smaller villages nearby. This created a ripple effect. The message spread like wildfire. For example, when Revere reached Lexington, he warned Adams and Hancock. He also met up with Dawes there. They were successful in their primary mission, but their journey was not over. They still needed to reach Concord. That is where the military supplies were stored. And they were running out of time. This shows that the success of the night was not dependent on Revere alone. It was a relay race. Many people carried the baton. Revere started one leg, Dawes started another. Other unknown riders carried it further. The warning reached far and wide. It woke up the countryside. The militias began to gather. They were ready when the British arrived. This was a testament to a well-organized system. It was not a single heroic act. It was a massive, coordinated effort by many individuals. After a meeting in Lexington, Revere and Dawes decided to continue their ride to Concord. They knew the supplies there needed to be moved. They also knew Adams and Hancock should not be the only ones warned. The whole region needed to be ready. They were joined by a third rider in Lexington. His name was Dr. Samuel Prescott. Prescott was a local physician. He was heading home after visiting his girlfriend. He was a patriot. He knew the local roads even better than Revere or Dawes. He offered to help. The three men rode together for a while. It was late. The night was dark. They were making good time. But then their luck ran out. Just as they approached Lincoln, a group of British officers on patrol ambushed them. These officers were out looking for messengers like Revere and Dawes. They had been sent out specifically to stop the alarm from spreading. Revere was captured almost immediately. The British soldiers stopped him. They questioned him. They held him for a while. Eventually, they took his horse. They, marched him back towards Lexington on foot. And then they let him go. Revere was freed, but his ride was over. He never made it to Concord. Dawes also tried to escape. He turned his horse and galloped away, but his horse threw him. Dawes fell off. He hit his head. He had to abandon his ride. He walked back to Lexington. So, both of the primary messengers sent by Dr. Warren were stopped. If this had been a solo effort, the alarm would have largely failed. The British might have succeeded in their mission, but this was not a solo effort. Remember Dr. Samuel Prescott? He was the third rider. When the British ambushed them, Prescott, being more familiar with the terrain, spurred his horse. He jumped over a stone wall and rode off through the swampy woods. The British could not catch him. Prescott got away. Prescott was then the only one of the three who successfully reached Concord. He delivered the warning there. He ensured the military supplies could be moved. He alerted the people of Concord. He kept riding even further west, spreading the alarm to other towns. Without Prescott, the alarm might not have reached Concord in time. His quick thinking and knowledge of the area saved the day for that leg of the journey. This moment proves how important the group effort was. Even when the main messengers failed, the system worked. Someone else picked up the slack. The network had resilience. It was designed to keep the message moving. It was not dependent on any single person. And it wasn't just Prescott. As the main riders passed through towns, local militias and committees took over. They sent out their own riders. These local riders fanned out. They went to smaller hamlets and farms. They ensured everyone knew the British were coming. This created a vast network of alarm. It crisscrossed the Massachusetts countryside. By dawn, the alarm was widespread. Thousands of militiamen were gathering. They were ready. The British troops marched into Lexington and then Concord. They found the colonial militia, known as Minutemen, waiting for them. The first shots of the American Revolution were fired. This would not have happened without the combined efforts of many people. The ride was not a failure when Revere and Dawes were stopped. It kept going. This showed the power of a true team effort. So, it is clear that Paul Revere's ride was not a solo act. It was a massive group effort. Many people, both known and unknown, played vital roles. They gathered intelligence. They planned the routes. They carried the signals. They rode through the night. They ensured the alarm spread far and wide. Without this collective action, the British might have achieved their goals. They might have seized the supplies and captured the leaders. The American Revolution might have started differently, or later. But if it was such a group effort, why do we mostly remember Paul Revere? Why does his name stand out? The answer lies largely in the power of a good story, and in the person who told it. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow wrote his famous poem, Paul Revere's Ride, in 1860. This was 85 years after the actual event. Longfellow was a popular poet. He wrote the poem at a time of great division in America. The Civil War was approaching. Longfellow wanted to inspire Americans. He wanted to remind them of their shared history. He wanted to highlight courage and patriotism. For his poem, Longfellow picked Revere. Revere was a good subject. He was a silversmith, an artisan. He was a man of the people. Longfellow's poem made Revere a clear, singular hero. It simplified the story. It made it easy to understand. It gave America a rallying cry. It made Revere an icon. The poem is beautiful and dramatic. It has a strong rhythm. It paints a vivid picture of one brave man riding alone. It talks about the fate of a nation hanging on a spark from his steed. This kind of language captures the imagination. It makes for a compelling narrative, but it leaves out the messy reality of history. It leaves out the other writers like William Dawes and Dr. Samuel Prescott. It leaves out Dr. Joseph Warren. It leaves out the signal keepers. It leaves out all the local writers who carried the message from town to town. Longfellow's poem was not meant to be a historical document. It was a work of art. It was meant to inspire, and it succeeded wildly. It cemented Paul Revere's place in American memory. It made him a household name, and in doing so, it overshadowed all the other contributions. This is not to say that Paul Revere was not important. He was. He was a brave and dedicated patriot. His role in warning the countryside was crucial. He took great risks. He was a key part of the communication network. He deserves to be remembered for his courage and his service, but it is important to understand the full picture. The events of April 18 and 19, 1775 were a testament to community organization. They were a testament to collective action. They showed how people working together can achieve incredible things. It was a network of intelligence, communication, and brave individuals. They all contributed to the success of that night. The alarm reached Concord. The militias gathered. The first shots of the revolution were fired. This happened because many people played their parts. They were anonymous heroes, they were local leaders, they were loyal neighbors. Paul Revere received two. He was a very important one, but he was not the only one. The Midnight Ride was a symphony of efforts. Revere was a prominent instrument in that symphony, but many other instruments played their part too, making the music that started a nation.